The following is a conversation with Luke Infinger, owner of Holstein Parts, and HIP, a marketing agency for orthodontics and cosmetic dentistry. Now, the interesting thing is it didn't all start here for Luke. He got his undergrad at SCAD in Motion Design, and when it comes to orthodontics marketing, he takes an extremely holistic approach, not just sending leads to the practice, but helping the entire flow of the patient journey. He's very focused on self-development for not only himself, but his team. And it's really interesting when we get into the conversation about how to have both a successful business and a successful marriage. So I really hope you enjoy the interview. I'm here with Luke Infinger. You started at SCAD and you were a motion designer. That was what you went to school for. But now we're here at the HIP headquarters, also Holstein Parts.
Yeah.
Am I right? And what a journey, you have come on, going from being a motion designer in school to now owning this massive company doing multiple different things. So if you wouldn't mind, I want to go back to you in school. What was the Luke Infinger in school? Was he a rebel rouser? Was he followed by the rules and teacher's pet? What did that look like to get you here?
Yeah, so school for me was a big leap. I had kind of been stuck previously for many years, wondering what I was going to do. Okay. And I was working actually at a church doing graphics. Prior to that, I was working at a company, which is kind of where I got my start to motion. Okay. I was making job videos for Gannett, who owned 90% of newspapers. So kind of, if you would imagine a Indeed type of function, like a job board on a newspaper, and they would have videos to kind of intrigue people about roles.
Okay.
That's what I was doing. Economy crashed. Newspaper took a massive hit. I had to go work for a church, which was actually a really good thing because that let me go deeper into motion graphics. And then my sister was actually home. She's a number of years older than me, three and a half years. And she was taking a pottery class at Pensacola State College. And an old professor was like, tell Luke, virtually he needs to do something with his life. And this professor is kind of a love-hate relationship. A lot of people don't like him, but for me, when I was there, he actually pushed me in a good way. Okay. So a lot of people, and I've kind of noticed that through the years where I'll be fine with certain people and actually take certain advice they have, but throw other things out the window who may be very controversial or not liked people. This just happened the other day where somebody was like, oh, I don't like that guy. And I'm like, well, you got to know how to take certain things from them and block out certain things that may not be applicable. But anyway, This guy told my sister that. My sister came home, and I had already kind of been thinking about this heavily. Obviously, what should I do? What am I going to be in life? I'm 23 years old at the time and not doing anything.
So you were kind of taking, you weren't taking any college class at this point?
No, I was just working part-time.
Okay.
A part-time gig.
Graduated high school, part-time
I think I was making
gig.
$600 a month.
Dang.
Okay?
No education yet, really. Get college education.
Right.
Okay.
I had 2 years from just graphic design, but you can't do much with that. And so I was went all in. I'm going to go to SCAD if it's the last thing I do.
Okay.
And so it was about a year process of writing letters, financial aid. Short of the story, I got most of my school paid for by continuing to submit letters and demo reels and things to just basically keep bothering them, keep knocking on the door. I'm persistent.
Yeah.
And that's something that served me well in a lot of instances. So finally, about a year later, I go. It was culture shock at first. I was a little bit of a rebel, got into partying, doing things I probably shouldn't have done, but I took school very seriously. So, I would stay up and work all hours of the night, kind of turned nocturnal.
Yeah.
The big benefit and big takeaway for going to a school like that isn't the degree now.
Okay.
It's the competitiveness. So I'm a very competitive person, and I need to be in an environment where I'm challenged. I think anybody does, but some people, maybe it just doesn't resonate with, or they don't like being out of their comfort zone. I love it. When I'm challenged and when there's people better than me, I'm going to rise to the occasion and be the best in the room if it's the last thing I do. So I actually wasn't that good. Like, I'll tell you today, like, I'm actually not that good of a designer, but I was willing to put in the work, teach my eye, learn the laws of design. And I could say I could box with, on certain styles like editorial, flat 2D.
Okay.
I could do really well when it came to 3D and more flashy type of software. That wasn't for me, but that's my big takeaway is like, if I had to do it over again, I don't know that I would do much different, just because that competitiveness really kind of kicked me into gear and it stuck with me.
So what was out of your element? You said when you got there, you were kind of out of your element.
Just like being away from home.
Okay.
Being around only high performers. Like there at a school like that, if you're a low performer, you don't last. Like you'll see somebody who flunks out in, one semester of classes, you won't see him the next semester. And they actually did it in quarters. So you got 3 quarters in instead of semesters before summer, which was cool. But yeah, it was just being away from home, new people. I was homeschooled my whole life. So I had never kind of been exposed to like this public school, be around, lots of people, 30, 40 different people in your classes. That was something that was new to me for the most part. I had experienced it at junior college, but I could get in my car and drive home,
Good point.
in SCAD, or when I was at SCAD, that wasn't the case. And so kind of took me about 6 months to get acclimated to that. And then, I was probably one of 4 of a graduating class of about 50 in motion graphics who actually got a job right out of the gate at a motion studio. In fact, my friend, his name's Ben too.
Okay.
He became my roommate in New York. He was much better than me at motion graphics, but he got a job like at some other like gaming type agency because he couldn't find a job at a motion graphics studio. It's actually very, very limited. It's New York or LA. These days, maybe Atlanta, Chicago, Portland also.
Okay. So what is limited about it?
Post-production is a very interesting space where, budgets are kind of exhausted in post-production. So they spent all this money on the idea, conceptualizing, producing it. If you look at a show like Game of Thrones, I mean, how much does it cost to film a show like that? And then to advertise, especially, not only doing like the special effects and things that HBO would do in-house, but like advertising it with post-production, titles, promos, openers, things like that are like the last thing. So it's squeezed. It's like, okay, we've only got 40 grand left to make the intro for Game of Thrones. And so typically big motion design firms, there's like 3 or 4. There's not a lot. So most of it's boutique. The one I worked at was like $1 million a year type of company, but very prestigious, boutique-y. And so jobs were extremely limited.
Yeah, and then even $1 million a year, that's like
nothing in New York.
Yeah.
Nothing. It may have been a little bit more than that, but it wasn't much. And so I just, again, that persistence served me with sending every single person at the company a LinkedIn message, following up. One of them happened to be a SCAD alumni, which again,
relationship.
Yeah. And he got me an interview. And the boss tried to give me like an internship, but I already had a job lined up in Jacksonville at a digital agency. So I'm like, hey, here's what I would need to actually work here. I would need a full-time job around this type of salary, which was nothing. I think I made like 50 grand a year, living in New York, but I got the job.
Yeah.
And again, competitiveness in New York at a motion design shop versus comfort in Jacksonville at a digital agency where like I'm the only motion guy, or there's 1 or 2 of us. I always went for the more competitive, harder type of situation. It's just something that has always kind of interested. I don't want to be bored, and I don't want to settle. And so I think that helped me too. Again, going out of my comfort zone, moving to New York City, not knowing too many people, working in a very competitive space where like everyone around you is amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you find that getting to that position, did you know a strategy based on something that you'd heard? Or it was just like, I'm just going to follow up. I don't even know what I'm doing. Let's just go bananas over it.
Yeah, exactly. It goes back to kind of the first job I ever had, which was Chick-Fil-A.
Okay.
My sister had guitar lessons every Wednesday at UWF, and I would get my mom to drop me off at Chick-Fil-A on 9 Mile and ask for an application, fill out the application every week, and ask for a manager and hand it to a manager. And sometimes it was a different manager, but finally this guy came out with like a stack of applications like this thick, and they were all from me. And he's like, okay. And I knew I was going to be hired at that moment.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I was only 15, which is why they didn't hire me sooner. Because when you're 15, you can't do things like drop fries and hot oil and things like that.
You can't risk your life at Chick-fil-A.
Exactly. I guess, insurance, if you're an adolescent, won't pay out. But regardless, I got the job. And that's just how I've always done things in life is like, it's within possibility. It's not like I'm trying to go work for NASA or something.
Hey, why not though?
Yeah. But it's within the realm of possibility for Luke, and I know it is. And so I'm going to exhaust every avenue until I'm either told yes or no. Why not?
Yeah.
If I know it's something to go after and something that I could do well in and help others, I'm going to give it everything I've got. So I've kind of done that at every level. Obviously, I've been in situations where, that whole time period of the company I worked at with Gannett and then the church where I was just in my comfort zone because I didn't have a vision for where I wanted to go or needed to go.
So you kind of like laid low in that.
I floated. I mean, I was literally, I was getting better. Like I said, the church was good for me because like I was able to do a lot more graphic heavy motion stuff and, buy a bunch of After Effects templates and tear through them and learn and do things, on my own. I had a lot more time to play around with things and freedom.
Yeah.
But to a certain degree, I was floating.
Okay.
So when I went to school, I was like 24 going on 25, like 24 and a half. People in my class were like 18, 19. There was some people that were my age, but it was few.
Yeah.
And so that kind of hit me when I got there of like, I don't have time to waste.
I was about to say, did that give you an edge mentally?
Yeah.
Like you're like, okay, these kids could screw around for 3 years post-grad and I've got to get rolling.
Yeah.
Who, going back to like dropping off applications at Chick-fil-A, who did that in your life? Like, was your dad or your mom, like one of those people that was just like...
It was my grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your grandmother.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My mom's mom.
Okay. Yeah. How did she teach you that?
She was just a super strong woman. When she made up her mind about something, it was very hard to challenge her. If that makes sense, she just went after it and was articulate, aggressive, and had urgency. And that just stuck with me, Did
you spend a lot of time with her?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I was homeschooled, I think she homeschooled me 2 days a week, like a Tuesday and Thursday, and she did all the English and like liberal arts, so Spanish, English, grammar, and she actually had her master's degree, so she taught at a college level.
Dang, that's who
your teacher was. She was like, very but I remember one time she finally got me to quit biting my fingernails because she put poison on my fingernails.
Oh my gosh, so she was hardcore.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm like, what would happen if I kept? And she's like, I think I would have just gotten really sick. It wasn't, but still, it's like if you told somebody that you did that today in today's age, you could like get your kids taken away or something.
Totally.
So yeah, she was pretty extreme.
No doubt. So, okay, you're graduating, you're now in New York. At what point did you decide, or was it a decision, I'm going to be more business then I'm going to be motion graphics? Was it because the money was like so disappointing? Or
it was a number of things.
Okay.
So,
because that's kind of what I want to hear here, because I know there's a lot of people, sorry to interrupt, there's a lot of people who want to have a career in design, want to have a career in the arts, so to speak, but the space between actual sustainability and what they dream about doing, where's the gap, and how have you brought that together?
Well, I guess it's that phrase or definition rather of starving artist.
Totally.
And design can still be a lot different than an artist, but that there's still a lot of overlap. You have a canvas, you have a creative brief or some creative runway. I think there's laws to design. There's not really laws to art, but there's a lot of similarities. And I'll say this, any technician, whether it be artist, designer, orthodontist, car technician, whatever, if you stay in a role of doing the technical part, in most roles, you can't scale. So like an orthodontist can, and they can stay in the clinic and doing things, but they hire a business person to come in and run the actual business, and that person's going to build a team underneath them. But, a car mechanic, he would have to do the same thing if he would want to grow. The guy who's cutting grass and has a landscaping company, how's he going to grow his company if he's the one who stays out cutting all the yards, right? You have to grow, expand. You have to figure out your organizational chart, leadership. These types of things are fundamentals in any company. So I realized, hey, the thing that has actually served me the best is sales, selling myself. When we talk about persistence, that's what it was, is sales. That's actually what I need to connect with. I don't necessarily need to be a designer. I always thought you had to have this like technical skill, and I'm not saying you don't, but I knew that my future wasn't in this technical skill of design.
Okay, because it wasn't like what gave you value and fulfillment, or because you had a vision of what you wanted your life to look like?
Yeah, the latter. So I had and I guess a little bit of both, but at the time, what connected with me was, how do I, in this vehicle of being a motion designer, get to the life that I want and envision and dream about? And there was a massive disconnect. And so I left my job in New York after about a little over a year, came back home. And at the time, the woman who I'm now married to, Catherine, she came back home from University of Alabama too. So we both came back here and, kind of fast track getting married. But I rethought in terms of business, everything. I read this book, which is probably extremely dated as of now, but back then it was pretty relevant. How to Make Money with Social Media, I believe is the title. Okay. I read this book, and it basically pitched this whole business model on a recurring revenue system versus going and selling these design projects. And we can talk about this maybe with designers, is like, oh, I'm going to sell this logo package, or I'm going to sell this website. And it's like, after that, what do? You got to figure out how to always have jobs lined up. So I was like, hey, what if I don't do that? I connect with business owners and see where they want to go for the next 12 to 24 months. I sell them on that, and then we break it down per month on what we're going to do to get there. And that's basically all I had figured out, but I started to sell that, and, rolled some clients into that off the bat, or out of the gate rather. And then it was really trying to figure out business and leadership and team building for a lot of years. Because again, I didn't know what I didn't know, so I didn't know how to scale beyond that. And so we as a company just kind of grew one by one of doing good work and being referred. But we didn't have any type of sales process, fulfillment process. We didn't know how to grow people. So like we still stayed very involved for a lot of years. And so we had to figure all that out. So
that makes sense.
That's kind of it from a 30,000 foot view. But yeah, there's, like I said, that whole figuring out of like the technician, and am I going to be able to be the technician and scale? I think it's kind of one of the first things to start to figure out in a business of like, how's this business actually going to grow, and how does my role need to grow and expand along with that?
So really, it's like deciding what you want, because there comes a point for a motion designer, there's a cap.
Yeah.
Whether it be income, whether it be ability, whether it be position in a company, versus doing your own thing, which then produces really limitless opportunity.
Yeah.
But you will have to accept that you will not necessarily be in that practitioner role.
Right.
For like, assumably.
If you want to grow and scale, and I think you see a lot of companies who don't. You know, I see a lot of companies who get to, and I don't know if this is true, but they say basically after about 100K in America, money actually doesn't buy happiness because all your basic necessities are met.
Yeah.
And so you look at a vast number of businesses probably earning somewhere between $500,000 to $2 million a year, maybe a little bit more, maybe in some cases a little bit less.
Okay.
Well, for the most part, if your margin's okay, then your basic needs are met. And so I see so many people get comfortable even 2, 3 million, 4 million of revenue, you know, decent take home. And I think it almost becomes about the money.
Okay.
And the vision wasn't that strong, or the vision got forgotten. And so if you look at people who keep expanding and keep growing, I actually don't think that money is the biggest driver. Like when you look at Elon Musk, he was like, I don't even know how much money I have until they tell me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, is
that.
money the driver, or does he just have a really big vision? And so I think a lot of people who stay small, it's actually about the money and earning an income and, you know, paying the bills. And certainly there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not what I wanted. When I started to really see success and see growth, I want to see how far not only I can go, but everybody around me can go. And so why cap that with something that is virtually made up anyway? You know, money. We don't see it. We don't feel it. It's a number on a screen.
Yes.
And so in my mind, you know, I don't even think about it that much anymore.
So at what point did that flip, and what did that do to your decision making?
So that's a good question. And I talked to somebody about this in an interview a couple weeks ago of just scarcity and limited beliefs and starting out in business. You know, I was a few $100,000 in debt because of, like I said, most of my school was paid for. I came out like owing $40K, which isn't bad, but my wife had about $160K of debt.
Okay, wow.
So we ended up living in my father-in-law's apartment complex for free because we were paying all this money. And, you know, while we sold a few clients into HIP and, you know, had it, I think, a really amazing customer service. And then, you know, me and Justin really focused on the product and the fulfillment. We grew one by one. And so it was really slow growth. And so my take home for a lot of years was very small, but at the same time, it was consistent. And when I would say, when I really kind of said, okay, the only way is up, I don't think I'm going to go back to zero, you know? So I had a safety net, kind of.
I see what you mean.
It was kind of like I normalized there. And I said, okay, now I really have to work on myself, my mindset. I have to make sure the people coming in the business I can actually grow. I have to make sure that, you know, I can lead people, mentor people. I can also mentor and advise clients, basically like a value ladder for myself and how, you know, I could grow and expand.
Okay.
And so I really started to work on that. There's this kind of morning ritual I do called a morning formula that I learned from this guy, Taylor Welch.
Okay.
And that probably started in 2019, right around the time that also we started to grow faster because we started speaking at an orthodontic conference. And the orthodontist that we work with, the first one we worked with, became the fastest growing orthodontist in the world.
Okay.
So we worked with him. He started his own course. When he would go and speak, you know, he would talk about us. And at the same time, I was kind of normalizing around where I'm at, stop fearing so much and saying, okay, the only way's up. Started to dig into a lot of books, podcasts. Me and Justin started to buy a lot of training and consulting from people.
Real quick, when you say the only way is up, you're saying that was a turn in your mindset.
Yeah,
that was a
totally.
turning point at which you said, okay, I believe that we're going to be able to stay at this level of income.
Minimum.
So with that in mind, how can I look towards the next step? Not how can I make sure I keep this? Because that was no longer, you decided that was no longer a concern. Management was no longer a concern. So that you could now look upwards.
Yeah.
And that's where this process kicked off of personal growth.
Yeah. And, starting to open your eyes a bit. So I think a lot of small business people, especially in small towns, they don't study other people. And so when I say me and Justin started to buy things from other consultants and advisors and coaches, especially when they have like a network, you get to hear what's possible by all these other people.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we're thinking really small, and I think a lot of small business owners fall into that where, like, if you own a electrician business or a custom home building business, how many times do you get in this mastermind and go, oh, wow, like I'm down here versus like my needs are met. I'm paying the bills. I'm going to coast, know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times with small business, it's just getting into coasting. And luckily I had a business owner who wanted to also invest in himself. We've spent tons of money. I would say it's probably in the millions of working with coaches, consultants, trying to not only carry ourselves forward, but how can we learn things and carry the business forward and carry the people in the business forward and carry the clients forward. I think that's really key. Looking outside yourself and not only reading books and listening to podcasts, but like immersing yourself in it. Because then it's like, okay, it's really not that hard to go from here to here. Is it crazy to think that the company could have a few hundred employees and do a few $100 million? Well, no, not if you offer that type of value,
So what is the difference between the time it takes? What did you discover the difference was between the time it took versus just the mindset change in that from going from small to bigger? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of aha moments along the way.
Okay.
It's for me, it's like constant and continual growing, and I think it's for me, I don't think it came in these big, giant, massive epiphanies. It was kind of small, day by day unlocking, if that makes sense. And so just starting to think different, expand your target, study from others. Inputs equal what you're going to be able to output.
Yeah.
And, you can look at all kinds of quotes and saying, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. I would say in a business sense, show me what you're tuning into and I'll show you where your business is going to go. And that's what I mean by most people don't invest in masterminds, coaches, consultants, advisors. It's like, oh, no, there's no way I'm going to pay that person $5K a month. That's $5K out of my pocket.
Yeah.
Well, is it? Or would that $5K, over 12 months, 60-ish, whatever, I'm bad at math, would you be able to turn that into tens of $millions if you applied all the learning from somebody who's been there? And I think a lot of times in small business, people have that scarcity mindset. I've got to hold on to this. I've got to hold on to this. This is my livelihood. And what if I can't keep this? And I need this money. And what if you just let go? And sacrifice today amounted to 100 times success, what you could imagine. And so I think that's what I started to do is I started to let go of the need and scarcity around money and just say, I'm going to expand. And maybe we've made some mistakes in investing, but certainly the pros outweigh the cons. And what better to invest in than yourself, whether it be mindset, health, well-being, skill sets. Invest in yourself first. And if you continue to invest in yourself, you're going to grow. Your business is going to grow. Don't be complacent. Don't stay comfortable.
So one of the things that I often think about in this and struggle with is investing in more on things that run alongside of your business rather than in your business. So for instance, like there's a lot of people who want to get into real estate because that could be something you could like quote unquote retire with.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think sometimes people are jumping the gun too early into things that are future things when they should be building something currently?
Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
So like talk about real estate. We had a friend who would basically offload properties where, so they had a fund, okay?
Okay.
They would buy properties, and properties they couldn't keep based on their debt to income ratio, they would offload every single month to a small list of people. It's probably 200-300 people they would email, and we started buying the properties.
Okay.
Well, 2 houses in, I realized this is ridiculous to try and jump into. It takes so much time to get the deal to go through, talking to lenders, talking to property managers, emails back and forth. Oh, you forgot to sign this paperwork, or we need your signature on this. Like just so much work to get a deal done. And then when the deal's done, it's like, oh, you're making $200 a month. Yes. And then it's like, oh, the AC broke and the home warranty loan expired. And so now it's $5,000 to fix the AC, which happened to us. That's a true story.
Okay.
So you learn things like that. It's like, well, nobody told me the home warranty, expired. And it's like, oh, well, you have to keep up with that. It's your house, So there's all these like nuances you have to keep up with, and most people aren't prepared for. And if you're not able to go buy 50 properties or 100 properties, obviously it could be doors instead of properties. You could buy a unit.
Yep.
You're not going to make any cash flow. Down the road later on you could, but you've got to be sinking a lot of money into that, and you have to then have a team to be able to keep up with that and do it for you. And it's like, do I need to take my eye off my prize, which is my business, which is earning not only myself a great living, but the people who work with us, and it's helping all these orthodontists? Shouldn't I just focus on that versus adding one more thing to my plate that could pay off in the future? And so it's like, yeah, I'll invest in properties if I can hire somebody, give them power of attorney, do the deals for me. They find the deals, they vet the deals, there's criteria around the deals, etc. And I'm not there in a place to do that. So it's like I'm looking at property again, but it'd be syndication deals.
Okay.
Where you're letting somebody else use your money.
Yeah.
That makes sense, but I do think people jump into things too soon, and it's this magic bullet or shiny object syndrome. And just keep your head down, But it's a balance again, because like I do think if it's something that could benefit you or the company and be like coaching, open you up to networking, that makes sense. But if it's like a whole new business venture and it's going to cash flow and it's going to be this, like, I would probably hold off on that.
That was kind of like the question I have throughout this learning discussion is like, what it sounds like is when you're learning things that are business focused, it's actually less time consuming and creates way more value than the idea of something that could have a lot of value, but the amount of time actually offsets the value it produces.
Totally.
And in this case with real estate, it was only $200, and then you actually spent $6,000. So it kind of flowed off in the opposite direction, but it was a shiny object.
Yeah.
So how much time? Okay, now let me re-ask that. In what way did you first act upon the new knowledge? Was it hiring people? Was it an organization thing? Like, where did you see kind of the biggest takeaways after starting to invest in yourself? Like, what things changed on the day-to-day that made the biggest difference?
I mean, that's a tough question. It's a lot of things, but yes, I do think it is people, because if you're in any business, in most cases, you're in the business of people.
Hmm.
There's probably a few exceptions, but 99% of businesses today, until AI and robots, take over in 3-4 years, it's people. And so, for a number of years, we had no idea how to hire people. It was like, oh, well, this person applied for the job. They interviewed okay, throw them in. And like a couple years in, probably, obviously right away we knew it wasn't working. But how do you fix that? It's not like we were once amazing bosses and amazing leaders. We had to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, well, we need a hiring process. One of the key moments in hiring, we realized that a lot of people who were really qualified and seemed like great fits were actually turning down jobs working for us. They're like, oh, I actually took another opportunity. This happened like 4 or 5 times in a row within like 60, 90 days. And so then we're like, hey, we need to rethink all of this. So we started to work with somebody, Wiseman Strategies, who helped us with recruiting, but they also helped us once the baton was passed to us. And it's like, hey, epiphany I had was we've got to pitch these people on why they need to work and partner with us. And so it goes back to sales is like, I've got to sell you and pitch you on why this is the job for you, because people with skill sets, there's a shortage of people with skill sets.
Yeah.
And there's an abundance of companies like Facebook, Google, all the way down to little agencies like HIP.
Yeah.
And so an individual like myself or yourself could have a lot of choices. And so how are we going to make them choose that we're the right company for them? I think it starts with selling them on us and our vision and our values. And so over COVID, we engineered a lot of things, but one of them was core values, DNA, service values, really painted the picture for the company and the culture, and then bottled that up, put it into a presentation. Not only do we sell people in the interview, but once people are hired, that's baked into our culture as well. So
it runs through
DNA,
the whole process.
Core values, just the ecosystem and the vibe that we want in our company is all the way from first interaction to you've been working here for 4 or 5 years.
How do you sell something interesting that isn't interesting? If you're in that situation, I'm not saying what you're doing isn't interesting. I'm saying, what if you have something that seemingly is like not exciting to work for?
Yeah.
How are you creating something exciting to work for if the actual maybe product isn't? So I don't know.
Like auto parts.
Yeah, I guess.
But
I mean,
boring.
auto parts are kind of cool. Like if you're into
Not
cars.
the parts we sell.
Okay.
So this is
So yeah, there you go.
flipping businesses to
Yeah.
like ABS sensors.
Yeah, that is not exciting.
Yeah, it's not exciting at all. I think it's the opportunity. So
Okay.
like again with growing, like, and this is what I realized. This is the big shift. This is probably like the main point of this whole interview,
Okay.
if there was one.
Okay.
Is how do you take your art from something where you think it has to be hands-on and tactical to the art of creating ideas and creating organizations and creating resources and education, because I'm still creating, but I'm not doing motion graphics. I'm still creating, but I'm not designing logos. I'm still creating, but I'm not doing websites. And my value is 100 times what it was then. And so I had this mindset of, oh, I've got to be a designer. I've got to make pixels move. But is that more valuable, or is walking into your business and creating an entire plan for you to grow and how you're going to do it more valuable? So for me, it was, again, like, how do I stay creative, but go back to and kind of find how I apply it to my natural instinct, which was sales, influence, persistence. Early on, I had no idea I could take those things that I was kind of naturally good at and develop them to offer tremendously more value than like being a designer.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying design doesn't offer value. It does. Just for me, again, going back to I wasn't the greatest designer. It didn't come naturally to me. I could be good at it, but it just wasn't my purpose. And so I think there's a lot of people, and I've come across these people where they think they have to go design things and pitch websites, and really they're good at like sales and influence, and they need to figure out how do they apply that to a target market who's in need of it.
That's really what that's what I found for myself.
Yeah.
Is I was not that great of a designer.
Yeah.
I had to force myself through school, force myself in jobs to do the best that I could. And even my best was probably as good as some people's mediocre days.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. This guy, I'll rename him. Let's say his name's Bill.
Okay.
He came in, this was probably 2.5 years ago, and spent 2 days with me and Justin, mapped out what we were going to do for our marketing, ebooks, ads, copy, hooks, angles, like sticky notes all over the wall, big sheets of paper, could pull the information out of us. It felt so natural to work with this guy.
Yeah.
Well, he thought his value was after that going and pressing all the buttons of making the ads work on Facebook. And turns out he was dyslexic, so there was like massive grammar issues in the copy.
Yeah.
He wasn't a designer, so, images or Canva designs looked poor.
Yeah.
And one day I'm like, Bill, like, this is not your value. Like, you could hire somebody to click the buttons and turn the ads on and set up the right structure and make sure to run ads through Grammarly and spell check them and things like that. What you're good at is the strategy. And I don't know anybody else who can walk in, especially for agency owners, and plan out a whole year and pull out hooks, ebooks, education, a content strategy, and an ad strategy. And you could probably charge $20K for 2 days. What if you did that? And what if you figured out a way how to scale it where it's over Zoom and you don't have to fly there in person, or maybe they pay you $40K to come in and fly? And he's like, he shifted his whole thinking. But I think a lot of people get hung up with, I have to do the tactics and I have to press the buttons or I have to make the pixels dance. And it's like, I think there's a lot more value in a lot of people who can figure out how to harness their strengths that are kind of more innate. And certainly it was for me. And yes, I had to develop them. And yes, it took a number of years. But I really leaned into that and kind of, if you will, killed the designer inside of me in most instances.
Yeah.
You
have to let go.
Yeah.
To find something new.
Yeah.
Is there a way? What if you don't have somebody in your life to notice those things? You need to build your circles. So like you pointed out in this guy.
Yeah.
He needs to be doing this.
Yeah, well, that's where I think when I say, most businesses, 99% of it's people.
Yeah.
Who are the people that we're around, are we around people who can pull us up, who can help us and give us wisdom? Or are we around friends that, are tellers at banks and things? And then certainly there's nothing wrong with that, but you have to know who you will allow to speak into your life.
Yeah.
If you have a friend and, they're sweeping floor somewhere, great. They may not be able to advise you on growth in your business. And so I think you've got to figure that out. And, okay, this is my list of people who, can speak into the business or should for these reasons. They've been there, they've done that. They're growing their own business, or maybe they scaled and exited, or, they've coached 50 other business people like me. Like, find people who have done it and who have gone before you and study them. Certainly there's endless books for this, but I do think there's value in being in a network that's real time, that's going to give you some accountability, and that competitive type nature, I think, is in most business owners. I think that's key for growth.
Because even just one side note from another business owner could be like a complete game changer in your business. Yeah,
and then it's how to apply it and how to stay on track and actually make it work. And that morning ritual I talked about, which I implemented kind of the same time over COVID, I think a little bit before 2019.
Yeah.
So this morning formula is basically what we tell ourselves: affirmations, identity, credo, a mission statement, financial targets. And so instead of just reading it on a sheet of paper, I made a slide presentation, made a Loom video where I like talk over the slides. So I say the things on the slides, then I take that edit and drop it into like Premiere and put some like awesome cinematic music underneath it. And it emails me every single day at midnight. So when I get in my car at 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning to come to work and work out, I play that. And I really think there's something to listening, reading, whatever you want to do, targets. Where are you headed?
So is that something you update?
Yeah, I update it 2 to 3 times a year.
Okay.
But that's when a lot more rapid growth happened. And if you dig into people like Earl Nightingale or Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, and a lot of other business people, who's the other guy, he wrote this book, Hero on a Mission. Okay. And you know, it's you'll find this in a lot of people. Mike Tyson, I bought a course from him that my friend filmed in LA. Same type of stuff.
Interesting.
Affirmations, what you tell yourself, doing, you know, a form of hypnosis or prayer could be, you know, hypnosis, basically more focused states of, what's the word I'm looking for? Reflecting, meditating, you know, on these things. And I think it's even for me biblical. You know, the Bible talks about meditate on these things, asking ye shall receive. You know, there's all these, the worker's worthy of his wages, all these types of things that were applicable for me, that it really made sense to meditate, you know, think positively, and just think more around growth than what if my business implodes and I can't spend $5,000 a month. And, you know, it's like, I didn't want to think like that.
Did you find yourself often asking too little for the work that you did because you didn't believe you were worth the value? Like, is that part of that mental ask and you shall receive? Yeah.
So for probably 2 years, I thought that orthodontist wouldn't spend more than like $3,000 a month. Our package now starts at $7,150 a month.
Okay.
So $3,000 and $7,000 is a big difference. Yeah. And that's monthly for 12 months.
What's your top package?
It depends on locations.
Okay.
I think probably 11 or 12K is probably our biggest client.
So there's
per
a
month.
little bit of a spread from the 7 to 12.
Yeah, because if they have multiple locations and things like that, then it would go up. But, you know, I think that's a big thing with designers and artists is like, yeah, I sold this logo and, you know, kind of made a deal with them for like $2,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, why would you do that? You know what I mean? And I was guilty of it. I have a friend right now who I'm kind of coaching and mentoring who is literally trying to wheel and deal on these projects. And it's like, hey, you've got to sell the value of your product. And if deployed, what it can do in their business, that's what you're selling. You're not selling what it costs as an entry point.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's value-based pricing. But if you really believe in what you're doing, I think it's a disservice to everybody included if you don't have the investment right.
Yeah.
Because your heart's not going to be in it. Like my friend who's doing this, like as soon as he sells it and starts working on it, he's not motivated at all to do his best work.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, you really have to believe in yourself and believe in the product. If you don't, I mean, certainly you can do things to get there, but if you can never believe in the product, then you need to change your product, you know?
Absolutely. Like if you don't think it's so hard because it's like, if you don't think you're worth 7, why would you charge 7? But you'll never think you're worth 7 until you charge 7 and you get the result. Mm-hmm. And so it really is like getting your mind there so that way when you do make a decision to charge 7, you're in it and you're ready for it.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that is that is happening under the hood of your mind before you even sign that deal. That will push the entire thing through, and you'll end that going, wow, this is my best work I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost like you push yourself out into the wild and you're like, I got it. I have to succeed. I have to bring that value.
Yeah.
And also it's just like, it opens up your mind of like, whoa, somebody just paid that.
Yeah.
And now you can give even more value. You can give even a better service. And then your reputation grows. I think a lot of times reputations don't grow because you are upset that you only got $500 for the logo and you give a crappy service and you're annoyed. You deliver the logo and then yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that's also the dilemma with being an artist, designer, and doing it for money. When I was in school, some of my best work and most favorite pieces all was in school because I'm not having to worry about, oh, well, did I sell someone on this? Am I on someone else's time? This is something that I'm interested in and I feel passionate about. And so the project was amazing. I think, you know, if we just go into motion graphics or design, the great designers and great firms, they find pieces that align with who they are and their mission and their values. Like I had a friend I graduated with, and she only works for vegan companies, and she's a vegan and runs a motion design firm, but you can tell there's a lot of passion there. And for me, when I went to work in New York, I lost all passion working on these projects that were dictated by other people.
Yeah.
You had a cool idea, they would shoot it down. You know, here's stay in these four walls and these four walls only. And I think a lot of people are not fulfilled at all in a creative capacity, actually working for money.
So how do you get fulfilled? Do you charge more so you can do less, so you can do more freelance projects? Or
Well, I think it actually would be the companies that I look at that are design focused. They do niche down and find something that aligns with who they are
like
and their
this
passion.
vegan friend?
Yeah.
Okay.
Another friend I have, I think you're friends with him as well, Andrew Wiseman.
Mhm.
Like he's a logo designer or branding.
Yep.
So he's passionate about branding and he only does branding.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he probably does a few other things, but he's selective about it and he may not advertise those things.
Yeah.
But what he does advertise and focus on is branding, and he's locked in, and it speaks to who he is and his interests and his values. And so I think that's really important, and a lot of people don't do that. It's just like, again, scarcity, money's limited. I've got to take whatever project comes, and then you're not fulfilled.
Yes.
You know, so you may sell them too cheap, but also at the same time, you're not passionate about the work at all. You know, if you're a vegan, it's this,
it's a lifestyle.
genetically modified bacon company who comes and, and you're like, oh, I got to do it. It's money.
Yeah.
And that's not going to work. You know, it's the same thing here at HIP. Like if a chiropractor calls us, well, we only work with orthodontists.
Okay.
You know?
Are you just stoked about teeth?
No.
Okay, then why? Then
I mean, I like a good smile, right?
Okay.
But
like
I'm not like stoked on teeth. What I'm stoked at is how can we help them do business better? How can we increase their profitability, their take home? How can we help them help more patients get the smile of their dreams? Because a smile equals confidence, and confidence is key for any type of role you move into if you want to be successful. If you're not confident, you can't transfer. Oh, sorry.
Now you did it.
If you're not confident, you can't transfer that confidence and certainty onto someone else. And so that I can be very passionate about.
Okay. So you're passionate about the result of your clients, but then also you love systems and processes. You love business.
Yeah.
So you've taken your love, like you said earlier in the interview, for sales and just being a bulldog for whatever you want to go after, and it's kind of infused itself into your niche, which is now orthodontics.
Totally.
So again, it doesn't always have to look like art, but like you said, it can be the art at which you are creating something.
Yeah.
A process, a system.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
And I think you can look at almost anything like that. You know, I don't care what kind of business it is. You can be creative and you can be a designer. You know, I mean, orthodontists are smile designers.
Yeah.
You know, so Yeah, I was just based on my own way of thinking, which was small and probably my circle. I thought, oh, well, to be creative, I have to be a designer.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's go back to hiring. You talked about changing your entire process around hiring. But I'm more curious about your confidence in hiring from a financial standpoint. So let's say you are, a designer, you own a business, whatever it might be, and you're wanting to hire, but maybe you're nervous about the finances it requires to hire. How did you hire when you were not doing it right? And how do you hire now? Is there always that money available for that employee, or you hire somebody and you think, okay, now we got to get hustling because we've got payroll to make, right? Like abundance versus scarcity.
So here's what's interesting is when we first started hiring, it was like, how can we hire somebody to be a rock star and help us with all these things, but we only want to pay them $35K a year? That's hypothetical, but let's just say that's ballpark. That was our mindset when we first started out. And then we realized somewhere kind of in the middle of, we actually need to hire fewer people and pay them a premium because those are the people who are actually going to be able to come in and show up at the level that we need to move the needle forward. We're not in the business of like dropping fries and making cheeseburgers. You know what I mean? We're in the business of really helping people dial in their businesses. So the people working with us actually need to be highly skilled, which come at a premium.
Yes.
And so what we realize is, even though we may be capped by how much we can invest and hire at the time, if we went and spent $75K to hire somebody, what we realized is that person could outperform the person at 35, not only that person, but probably 4 to 5 people easily. And those 4 to 5 people could never have the insight, wisdom, and value that the person at 75 could. So now we tend to look for premiums in most roles, certainly like supervisor and up. And then if it's somebody who's just entry level, which we do have a few entry level positions in the company, but those people have to be overseen by someone who is not necessarily veteran, but definitely more value and has experience and is at a higher salary. So I would say, like, with your first 1 or 2 hires, can you hire a VA who doesn't need much skill, and do you have all the SOPs created for them to do everything A to Z? Like, here's how to go to the bank. Here's how to book tickets. I only want to fly Delta. Like, your processes have to be spelled out so specific for a lower salary type of person to come in and help you.
Yeah.
We were never there. So I needed to bring somebody in who I could say, okay, you've already done this for the past 5-10 years. Here's the way we do things. I need you to hit the ground running. And that person's probably going to come at a much higher price. And then I think you can kind of work down and fill in holes. For us and the type of business we had, we really needed to add those core pillars to rely on. But, if I have a parts business and it mainly is just shipping parts out of a warehouse, and I can outsource logistics, I can outsource HR, payroll, and I don't need business level people, then I can spend a little over minimum wage, probably between $16 and $20 an hour to hire people to ship parts.
Yeah.
So I think it's situational, but I would say, don't be afraid to go out and spend the money. If you're looking for someone to take a lot off your plate and really deliver a lot of value, hire right and create a hiring process, give them a personality test, pitch them on the why, your core values, make sure that it resonates, and pay them really well. And you're going to be way happier. You're going to retain that person versus churning employee after employee and trying to hire cheap and, they didn't have the skill set. And, it's just, I think it's a balancing act and it's situational, but I think you can't be afraid to go out and spend the money for a really good team member.
Because that really good team member will take a much bigger load off of your plate than maybe like 5 lower entry level, like you're saying, positions that are not as technical.
Right. Are you in a place to grow lower level people and mentor entry level positions? We weren't, because in a lot of ways we didn't have our processes like they were in our heads.
Yeah.
And so we had to hire people who could come in and hear what we're saying and run with it, and then help us figure out how do we transfer these processes to paper, put them in step-by-step fashion, videos, written, there's a directory, and okay, now we can also bring in some entry roles to do button pushing, things like that, but also mentor those people and grow those people in the company.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're not in a position to mentor and lead entry-level people and you really need to rely on somebody who's just going to figure it out and go, they're probably going to come at a much higher price.
Yeah. And ultimately, you wanted to be out selling, building big business, casting vision.
Yep.
And so that mid to high range person would allow everything to fill in behind you.
Yeah.
But you had to set them up for success.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So now that you're here, new building within the year or so, right?
Yeah, we moved in November of last year.
Awesome. What? Where are your sites?
So my sites within HIP is to create a system where anyone who desired to grow their practice and become what we refer to as an easy grower could do that and do it in record time. Maybe take a 10-year plan and put it into 3 years. That's my vision for HIP in the orthodontic side. I'm working on my 5th book, but it's the 4th book in a series. So there's this practice growth series. We're developing online courses. We're speaking at events.
Courses for orthodontics, books for orthodontics.
Only the business side. So obviously clinical,
You mean
getting
you're not teaching?
Yeah, I can't get into that yet.
Some legal things there?
Yeah, maybe we'll hire somebody for that one day. But it's simply just growing and expanding the business. And what I find is there's a lot of orthodontists who can't grow just because of their mindset. It actually transcends orthodontics, and it's probably every business owner who can't grow.
Makes sense.
But some people are really open to it and some people aren't. And they're kind of their own, what I'll call onboard terrorist, where they're self-sabotaging and blowing things up, internally and within themselves and within the business. That's kind of toxic. And for some of those people, maybe they won't ever be able to turn the corner. But then there's this middle ground where, I want to think more positively and think in abundance, but I'm in this really bad situation. And you kind of have to paint the picture for them, and they just need some encouragement. And then there's, the top 2% who are going to do it regardless of any situation.
Yeah.
But, my goal would be even the person who seems like there's no hope for, that with the resources we have, some of those people are going to be able to climb out of the negative thinking, scarcity, greed, dishonesty, and turn their business around. Because, we talk to hundreds of orthodontists and dentists a year, and we only work with 215. So how is it that we get on the phone with something that at this point is very scientific? You want to call 40 doctors and ask them what it's like in their growth stories and hear how they've gone from $500K a year to $2.5 million, or 0 to $2 million, or we have a guy who went from $180K to $3.6 million in 2 years. I mean, every type of case study and situation, for the most part, you want to hear about, we'll put you on the phone with somebody, and people still don't buy. Why is that? And so I'm in this place where it's like, let's fill in every single blank that could be a blank in their mind. And then at that point, that's all I can do.
So you're saying you're trying to fill in the gaps where they're not converting.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Yeah.
So what do you need to talk them through or walk them through to become a yes? Is that
everything.
something you want to attack?
Yeah. So everything, and so the books in the Practice Growth series start with the front desk. If you can imagine a doctor's experience you had, booking, sitting in the waiting room, getting scheduled, maybe you had to miss the appointment and reschedule. It's a nightmare.
Yes.
And the front desk, I'll call it in an orthodontic office as a scheduling coordinator, is one of the most looked over roles in all of the practice. Oh, just get somebody, throw them in. Again, like what we were talking about, minimum wage, not bonus them. No, we don't need to do that. They just need to make whatever it is, $10 an hour or $15 an hour.
And they're like the gatekeeper.
They're the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that they're going to want to improve? They're going to want more work. They're going to hone their skill or even know what their skill is? Do you ever listen to phone calls? Do you ever look at metrics and see how many phone calls were missed for the day? Do you ever look and see how many leads came in and when did we follow up and how many times did we follow up? And people who had scheduled appointments today, gosh, 30% of them no-showed. What are we doing for confirmations? Like, most doctors don't have time to dig into any of that.
Yeah.
This becomes the whole like technician and can I do every job in the practice or who do I need to hire? And then a lot of business owners or orthodontists won't pay $100K for an amazing ops person because, oh my gosh, how could I pay $100K? Even though I paid $800K to go to school.
Yes.
I can't pay $100K to grow my business.
Yeah.
And then they're in this dilemma and the gatekeeper is trash, to just be frank, but it's not their fault.
No.
It's the owner's fault. And so the book, Front Desk Secrets, goes through how to practically install the right system for that person to win and checks and balances be in place. That's the first book. Okay. So totally shift their thinking on the lowliest role in the company to this is a very significant role. Yeah. If they don't produce for the practice, then your treatment coordinator is not going to have anybody to see who's sales. So they can't sell anybody to now get braces on or be in Invisalign, which means you won't be helping anybody. Yeah. So it's this whole process, and it has to start on the first phone call the right way.
And this is before you technically even work with somebody.
Yeah.
So you're like, what you're saying is you're filling in all those gaps.
Yeah.
To basically create a funnel through helping people realize what is actually going on in their practice.
Yeah, it's like the business of orthodontics for dummies.
Yeah.
Like I've spelled it out to where like an intelligent third grader could install it in a business.
That's sweet.
So it's like at that point, I won't say I've done everything I can do, but I've done a lot. And then it's about talking about it more, breaking it down more. We're turning the books into online courses. We'll be speaking on stage about the material. We'll probably break it down into newsletters. We're already breaking it down into podcasts.
Sweet.
Just getting it out everywhere. That's my immediate vision. And I think we're going to grow like crazy. I don't think we've even seen the amount of growth that we could imagine or will be realized over the next 2 to 3 years.
So from there, does it become kind of a refining of systems and processes so you can handle that influx of clients?
Yeah, well, luckily today we have really good people in the organization. Again, we were some of the worst people in the world in hiring, leading, and we had a lot of good people that we hired, but then it's like, well, how are you going to mentor the person? How are you going to invest in the person? If there's not a framework for that, you hire them. And in a lot of cases, even very skilled people are going to say, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
I've got this job, but you're doing everything. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have a growth plan for the person, then you're never going to realize their value. And so you have to be pouring in and investing into them, and there has to be a framework for that.
So you have to hire them with who you want them to become.
Yeah, and there has to be some practical steps to make that happen.
What's the best book you've read for in shining a light on that process?
I would probably say that Traction is one of the better books with organization and leadership that's practical, because it's putting like an operating system together for 10-year, 3-year, 1 year, and then 90 days. That's probably its bigger picture. And then if you marry that with 1 Minute Manager.
I've heard of that.
Okay, so the EOS and Traction is going to give you the operating system and how to grow out of a how to grow out of a flat org chart. And it's going to give you targets, and it's going to then give you time-based commitments with the 90-day plan. And then 1 Minute Manager is going to be how to lead people literally in 1 minute. So if you mess up and you do something that's not good, I'm going to say, hey, Ben, thanks for trying that. I know your intention was to help me out, but here's what went wrong. And so what do we need to put in place so this doesn't happen again? Because I know you didn't want that to happen.
Okay, so you're learning in 1 minute how to turn it around.
Literally like that.
Okay.
Like, hey, this happened. I know your intention was good. Maybe in some cases it wasn't. So you would have to say that. So how do we course correct? Or if it was good, how do you spend 10 to 15 seconds praising the person? Hey, Zach, that was an amazing edit. You crushed it.
Yeah.
That people need that feedback and they respond to that. You know, hey, you crushed it, but there was, this spelling error, this people need immediate feedback. That's how people grow.
Yeah.
When they don't know what you're thinking, then they don't know what to do.
Yeah, they don't know the trajectory,
Right.
positive or negative.
Right. People need to know what you're thinking. So that's where 1 Minute Manager comes into play. And, in a lot of cases, I still have a lot to work on with that because people will tell me when I deliver feedback, like they don't know if I'm pissed off or like, because I'm just like go mode.
Yeah,
So emotions to me a lot of times, like
you forget
I don't
about
show them.
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, we can't do that again. Like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's what people respond to, and they need to know where they're at. They need to know when they hit the mark or miss the mark. And the people who are most valuable in the company who work with me directly, it's totally 1 Minute Manager style. That changed everything for me. I think you could read the book in an hour. It's like 80 pages.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll definitely get into that. So you talked about the Wiseman. What was the Wiseman?
Wiseman strategies. So
yeah,
just to give context, they are a company that delivers a framework and a platform called Predictive Index.
Okay.
So the Predictive Index will give you like a company, like a team circle, and it's got 4 quadrants. And it will place your team based on their personality in the circle. And then it will tell you, based on your circle and how balanced or unbalanced it is, here's where your company sits.
Who you need to hire?
Yeah,
Are you
exactly.
struggling?
Yeah, like everybody's top right. That means like everybody's like doesn't think through the details and just wants to go. So your company's probably going to implode because everybody's going to be coming up with ideas and execute. Now. And no one's going to be like methodically thinking these things through, which is the bottom right. Very systemized. Let's think through things. Let's make sure that we're really ready, aim, fire, not fire, ready, aim. And then you have the left side, which is but it'll break that down for you. And it doesn't person by person based on a personality type of assessment plus a cognitive test too. The cognitive test will tell you how well the person is at making fast decisions. Are they going to second guess things and need sounding boards or like, oh my God, I can't make a decision? Or is it going to be someone who's just like, all right, here it is, go. So yeah, it'll kind of break down, and then it breaks down per role. So it's like, okay, I have the CEO role. How does Ben fit into the CEO role based on based on his personality and cognitive score?
Like, is that actually where he should be?
Yeah.
Or should he be somewhere else?
He scored a 10 out of 10 on the COO role.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you can't always rely on things like this 100%, but if it can 90%, 85% get you there, and then you can kind of feel through the rest based on the specific person and situation, it helps a lot.
Cool. Are you and Justin yin and yang, or are you guys more in one area of the?
I'm top right as far as you can go.
Yeah.
On the right, I'm called the venture. So like, I'll just literally the world could be melting down, and I'm like, we're gonna go this way, and I won't second guess it. Like I'm high risk, like as far risk as you can go.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Justin's the bottom right. So we have some similarities, but he's going to be like, let's analyze everything before we move.
Which is like perfect.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've kind of learned when to just unleash me and let it go. And then when Justin really puts his foot down, it's like, oh, we need to stop and think about this.
Hey, buddy,
Yeah.
slow down.
Yeah. Like over COVID,
Yeah.
I thought through where we needed to go in a car ride to the office. And I called 2 people on the car ride, Justin, and I said, here's what we're going to do. We cannot move forward selling what we're selling. Everybody's pausing. People think the world's melting down. We're going to sell a virtual consult type of plan where we're going to sell doctors on, hey, people are sitting at home. All they have is the internet. We want them to opt into your ads and do a virtual consult, and they can pay in full. They can put down a down payment, and then you're going to schedule them for when you're going to open back up, which for orthodontists was 60 days in most states.
Yeah.
Virginia, New York, California was 90 days.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to sell people on. It's going to be this price point. Here's how it's going to work. He's like, yep, got to do it. Get off the phone, call Harrison, the sales guy. Harrison, this is what we're doing. Throw everything out the window. It's this. Here's the price. I've already set up the contract in PandaDoc. Go, when's your next sales call? In 30 minutes, sell them on this. And literally, we got 32 new clients in a month. Dang. And then all of our clients who opened back up came back on with us except for 2. And so we got everyone back and grew faster than we've ever grown before. And so, obviously in that situation, he was like, this totally makes sense. We're in a very critical situation. We've got to do it. And then, if we're not in a critical situation and I just come in and like, oh, this crazy idea is like, let's chew on that.
We're now
for a
selling
while.
tires at Holstein Parts.
Yeah. Let's validate this. Let's
Yeah.
think it through. Maybe we need to test it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of helped me refine myself as well. So
Cool.
that actually happens less. So yeah, it's balancing and partnerships are really tough. And so we're really fortunate to have a partnership that, supports the other person in the business relationship.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest fear for me, not having a partner currently, is like, should I have one? What do they look like? Where should I go? I know they would definitely be more of like a role of Justin, because I'm much more like you, like shooting to the stars. Like, we'll figure it out when we get there. Like, I have to practice ready, aim, fire instead of fire, ready, aim.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I'm always curious about when it comes to yin and yang partnerships and businesses, how each thing rolls. But it's cool because it seems like you are learning from him and he is learning from you. So you guys are actually becoming more of one business entity rather than 2 separate people trying to go towards the same goal.
Right.
Because you have had time to understand each other.
Yeah, it's leverage, right? And you learn to leverage each other's strengths and also, your team too. Obviously, it's all about leverage, and a winning team is going to figure out how to let that position run and do its thing, and then when to come alongside of it and help carry it. You look at sports teams the same way. Each person knows the plan. They have a playbook. The person knows their position. They know when they're going to go, throw a Hail Mary, or they're going to run this really tight formation, or, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing. We can learn a lot from winning teams in sports. And, there was a time in our company where the team was getting refined. And so maybe more people were leaving than some people thought. And it's like, hey, literally the last day of preseason to like the first day of opening season, half the team's cut overnight. Is that to win the Super Bowl or to lose it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't think going through a season where you're refining is bad. Obviously, as a company, if you stay in that season, it's probably not a good thing. But now our team kind of refines itself because you set the backbone, the DNA, the bedrock, the core values, the service values, the culture. Like we actually had somebody resign today. Now, this is much more rare nowadays, but it's great.
Yeah.
We didn't fire her. We didn't have to step in, remove her. it literally just culls itself. Now, yes, you're always sometimes going to have to step in, but for the most part, I think once your identity is really strong, people are either going to be pulled to that or pushed out.
That makes sense. All right, quick curveball. My last question would be, what does it take to have a successful marriage and be a successful business owner?
Okay, so you have to sell your spouse as well. Okay, so I talked about selling prospects. I talked about selling your team. Most business owners I know, they don't go home and pitch the vision and what it's going to take to get there. It's like, oh, how was your day at work? Oh, this happened, and that's it. What I started doing is walking in and saying, hey, here's the targets I have. Here's what it's going to take for me to get there. Can you buy into this?
So don't tell her.
Yeah, because this is what it's going to demand of not only me, but the family. I'm going to have to sacrifice this because I don't care what it is in life. If you want to do something and be something, it means that you're going to have to sacrifice somewhere else.
Yep.
And so I hear so many people talk about, oh, my wife's not happy, I'm traveling, or I never see the kids, or I'm not home at dinner time. And, you know, for me, those things are a season. So I went through a season like a year ago where I worked every Saturday for like 6 months. I actually have worked the past couple Saturdays, but I've brought my daughter to work and she like loves it here. There's, you know, tons of stuff to do here. When you have your own building, you can kind of make it fun.
Yeah.
I bring her some days to work, but more importantly, is your spouse buying into what you're doing? Do they even know where the target is? Do they know the sacrifice it's going to take? Because if you're missing dinner and they know the why and they're bought into that, it's totally different than like, oh, Luke texted me at 4 p.m. and said he's not going to be home. And I'm kind of shutting down and internalizing and not talking about it, and I haven't sold it and pitched it and got buy-in. I think that's where a lot of frustration comes into play, and probably a lot of marriages get on thin ice or end in divorce, is they just do this. You know, they grow apart. And so how can you keep things tight and tightly knit together? Literally, I made a PowerPoint and presented it to my wife like a week ago.
It's awesome.
So like taking it even further and like going into, hey, here's the targets. Here's what it's going to take. Here's where we sit financially, showing her like P&L statements of the company, personal bank accounts, because I want her to be even more clued in and have a pulse on things. And she's like, oh, you have a PowerPoint? Like, that's weird. I'm like, just wait till I present it. And
have you seen Couples Retreat?
Nah, yeah, it's been a few years. Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. And he's like, anyway.
But I think that that's what it takes, because you got to be on the same page. Yep. And what happens when they say, no, I'm not bought into that. You've been gone the past 4 years, and now you want to, there's seasons where like I'll leave every day at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
I'll take a day off. I won't work Saturdays for 6 months.
Yeah. You got to get on her vision too.
Yeah, totally.
But you got to know what her vision is. You got to ask her.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of it, is you open it up for conversation. You know, here's my vision for the family. Here's the companies, this and that. What do you think? Oh, well, I think you should do a little bit more of this, or that makes complete sense. And then once you get out of this season, could this be our season? And it becomes this conversational thing where then you're starting to understand how they think and what's important to them also. And I think in most cases, wife and kids, it's going to be quality time.
Yes.
In most 100%. Cases, not always. Maybe they're the visionary and they're the entrepreneur, and you're going to have to be more of that role within the household. But it's getting on the same page. And if you're not presenting it and selling it and pitching it, it doesn't have to be a PowerPoint. It can be a conversation, but how are they going to buy into it? You know, and then if they're not bought into it, are they, even if they're not vocalizing, are they kind of having some bitterness maybe, or animosity, or, maybe they're talking to their mom or dad and like, yeah, Luke's never home. He just travels all the time. Or, because I've been in those situations. The first year of my marriage, I wasn't around at all. Like I was just working and like, oh my gosh, we're never going to make money. We're in $200K of debt. I'm going to stay up until all hours of the night and try and figure this out. And in some cases that may have had some short-term gain, just like more sweat and, more sweat equity and hard work. But, my health suffered, my marriage suffered. And so I learned how to course correct and figure that out. And I do think that the job is still kind of stressful. It can be, could you imagine being the president or Warren Buffett or in these situations where it's just like super intense? And as entrepreneurs and business owners and people who are growing quickly, there's definitely some stress that other roles don't have, but it's how you deal with the stress, and like I have more fun today than I did 8 years ago, but my companies are 100 times bigger, and so how do you have that support system? How do you take care of yourself? I've learned to do that as well with my health, being physical, working out, taking time off, spending more time with my family. And, energy, this is kind of my last long-winded response is you have to know where to put energy. So Winston Churchill said, I never stand if I can sit, and I never sit if I can lay. And, obviously physically, if we look back at photos of Winston Churchill, he's not in shape. But the point is he knows where to exert energy. And oftentimes we're like, go, 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 energy in all places.
Yep.
Energy at home, energy, at work, gotta go here, gotta go do this, like just go, go, go mode. And like sometimes the best thing you can do is just rest and sleep and take time off and drink a bunch of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you're exerted in all areas, how are you going to show up for your team? And so for a long time, I thought it was just go, 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 go. Well, you're going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
And so days off, hydrating, eating good foods, working out, cold plunges, all these things, quality time, reading a book.
Yeah.
Those are sometimes, I think, more important than when you show up and exert a ton of energy into your business.
Well, your mind is refreshed.
Your mind's right. Yeah.
I know about 2 years into starting my channel, we decided to completely follow the Sabbath, and we take a full Saturday off every single week, no matter what. And that changed the game because I was there with my family. I was present in mind, and I was refreshed. Now I'd wake up early Sunday morning before we go to church, and I'd work.
Yeah.
But I would always take off a full Saturday. And it would be like Friday night to Saturday night, basically. So, but again, it's like the whole idea of like it was a guaranteed refresher. It was the whole idea of laying down, doing nothing, getting together with the family and the children, having a big meal at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And just that was our only plan, was to eat that meal for the day. Everything else was just up to what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is why I still have my head above water. Because it's a lot of work to build stuff.
Yeah.
And that is the key to the long game success. Like you said, you found short-term benefit from those long nights, long days, long weekends. But if you would have continued it, it would have been the demise of everything you worked to build.
Yeah. Earl Nightingale says, don't give up the things that you have for the things that you want. And so many people are giving up their family, their kids, their houses, whatever would maybe come with divorce or bad relationships to go get money or the fancy car or, whatever it may be. Don't give up those things that you can't replace. Money can't replace your family. Yeah. It just can't happen. Yeah. And so I think that goes more into principles, but certainly I think, these influencers and internet sensations are teaching people grind and go and money and cars. And, I would kind of advocate people to study the old greats like George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, these people who did it for, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. I mean, you look at Truett Cathy, he died at 92, I think. Don't quote me on this, but he worked until he died. Yeah. He took quality time with his family. He started foster homes, 14 foster homes, a camp for foster kids. He took time off, took care of himself, but he also found joy in showing up to work, and it was a balance.
Yeah.
And he became a multi-billionaire and gave away most of his money.
Yeah. He was in it for the long game.
Long game.
And
longevity.
for the influence.
Totally. Influence, longevity. He knew where to put energy.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
I would go on, but I want to respect your time. Thank you so much for just being here, sharing your wisdom, sharing the vision and the growth. It's an honor.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.